I just saw this quote. The West Virginia president, he used to be at Ohio State, Gordon Gee, back in 2009 had the following quote. I'll say it again over my dead body. Mark that down. We will not have a playoff in this era, period. He's still alive, isn't he?
Yeah. Yes.
Just want to make sure. It said over his dead body. Not going to have a playoff. We'll have modifications to this year's playoff, probably coming up next year. Stewart Mandel, senior college football writer for The Athletic, co-host of the Audible podcast. Your column was on fire. In fact, I'm picking it up. It's a little warm here, Stewart, from what you had to say about Bill Belichick. You start out by saying, congratulations, North Carolina. You managed to hire somebody completely unqualified to be your next football coach. You did that thing so many schools do when they try to win the press conference instead of win football games. It rarely works. All right, fill in the details of how you came to this conclusion.
Well, Dan, I've been covering college football for 25 years. I have seen time and again NFL coaches come into college pledging to kind of reinvent the wheel, run an NFL program at the college level. It's never worked. The only guy that I've seen, and he was wildly successful, was Pete Carroll. That was not because of anything he had done in the NFL. He was a maniacal recruiter who surrounded himself with other maniacal recruiters. Bill Belichick has never recruited a day in his life. So I think that he's right. I think he said college is more like the NFL than it ever has been, and he's right about that in terms of the portal and NIL, and these teams are hiring salary cap experts now, but recruiting is still the lifeblood of the sport. And then I think another key element, the two things Nick Saban was so good at, recruiting and motivation. And, in the NFL, that's not really a part of it. Their motivation is their livelihood. You're talking about 18 to 22-year-old kids who, if you've seen it all this season, right? Guys who just don't show up for a game sometimes. And, I think those are skills that are very unique to college. I don't know that, for all the great things he's done as a football coach, he hasn't had to do those things before.
But isn't free agency transfer portal?
Yeah, free agency is the transfer portal, but we've yet to see a program build itself entirely off the transfer portal. You can do it, Deion did it to basically purge the roster for a year, but now even he is, building it with high school kids for the long term. So I don't doubt he could come in. There's going to be a lot of buzz. There's going to be guys who absolutely want to come play for the 6-time Super Bowl champion, and that can work for a year. But how do you build a long-term program? I just don't think you can build a long-term program solely off we're gonna do the salary cap. We're gonna get the best free agents. At the end of the day, you still have to, ask a college coach what they spend a lot of time doing. It's DMing high school kids with little smiley face emojis. Come check out our campus. Like, that's a big part of it.
Yeah, but a lot of these coaches will pass that on to their assistant coaches. So if you have your offensive coordinator, your quarterback's coach, they're going to be DMing the quarterback. Bill Belichick can get on a Zoom call, talk to the kid and his family. I think we're underestimating Belichick's desire to prove that he can do this, that he is as researched as any coach in the history of sports has ever. He just doesn't walk into something and go, oh my gosh, wait a minute, I've got to do this. Or the collective is going to have money there. I think he's going to defer. Lombardi is going to, be his GM. He'll bring in some of his other assistant coaches. It just feels like this is, Belichick loves getting into the weeds and doing this stuff, or at least that's the feeling I get. I never underestimate him, even in a situation like this.
I definitely got the sense he has spent the year preparing for this. We've heard about this 300-page Bible that he sent.
Yeah.
His Pat McAfee interview, came off very prepared. There's no question about it. And I'll be curious to see who he hires. I mean, you mentioned Lombardi, also not a college guy. If he brings in some really good, experienced college recruiters, that will definitely help. But if the idea is we're going to just move the New England NFL franchise to Chapel Hill,
yeah,
I don't know. That you definitely need to have some guys who have a lot of experience at the college level.
Well, this is what Deion needed to do. I said Deion's not a great coach. Deion is a great CEO. He's a great brand. He brought in a pretty impressive staff. And I think that was important because, and this may be, Belichick's going to just coach. He goes into every game having an advantage of being a better coach than the guy across from the field. The question is, what kind of talent level can you bring in? And that will be the big challenge. I mean, the over-under is 6.5 wins next season, and that doesn't
I
look
mean,
like
Deion's biggest thing, well, not his biggest thing, but one of the biggest things is he got to bring in his son,
yes,
who might be the
yeah,
first quarterback
yeah.
drafted, and Travis Hunter, who might be the number one
Well,
pick.
if I
So,
gave you
yeah,
Belichick with Shador Sanders and Travis Hunter,
that would be a great start. Yeah.
you would have that would be 10 wins, or it'd be a disappointment. Is Deion staying at Colorado? No matter what happens. If Shador is the number one pick, the Raiders have the number one pick. Is Deion going to stay at Colorado?
I get the sense he's committed to stay Colorado next year.
Okay.
He loves it there. He feels like he's building something. But college football now is year to year. Is he? Nobody could predict, is he going to be there for 5 years? I think he'll be their coach in 2025, and we'll see beyond that.
You look at this format here, Stewart, and it's 12 teams now. I didn't like where Arizona State and Boise State were automatically placed in with these first-round buys. What is your solution, if you think there should be a solution to the 12-team playoff next year?
I think it's a good format in general, and I'm fine with rewarding conference champions with an automatic berth. But to your point, I don't think you should be manipulating the seedings so that the Arizona State's the number 12 team in the country, and they're getting the number 4 seed.
Yeah.
And Texas is the number 3 team in the country, and they're getting the 5 seed. I mean, I think just, Arizona State would not have gotten in without winning its conference championship. To me, that's reward enough. Now, I don't think anything will change for next season. But the year after that is an entirely new contract where the Big Ten and SEC can basically dictate the terms. And I'm sure we will see, at the very least, the end of the buys for everybody.
I would love to see the rankings are going to determine that. It's just like March Madness. You get in. That doesn't mean you get a first-round bye. So
Right.
This would be the top 12 teams. You get in. You win your conference, you're in. Now we look at the top 12 with rankings. And imagine that reveal show on the mothership that we're looking at the rankings. We're it's not, hey, that team's in, but where is Boise State playing or Arizona State playing? The first 4 teams get, first round buys. Then it could be a lot more interesting here and more of a TV show. So I think that's where we're headed. I don't know if it'll be next year, maybe, a year after that. If Ryan Day loses to Tennessee, finish that sentence.
He might not make it back to his house that night. I mean, that's the one scenario. Everybody, they're going to fire him. Not the only way that becomes into play in my mind is if he loses that first round game. Because think about that. His last 2 games, home games, will have been an inexcusable loss to Michigan and a first round loss with a team that was expected to at least play for the national championship. That's going to be if that's the case, a very miserable offseason. I don't, whether they fire him or not, I just can't imagine Ryan Day would want to come back into that environment.
Before I let you go, we just had a member of the audience ask about Pete Carroll. Has anybody reached out to Pete Carroll? If they're reaching out to Bill Belichick, does he have any interest in coaching again?
They should reach out to him because he was an amazing college football coach, right? And frankly, I don't think gets enough appreciation for the fact that he's really the only guy I've seen to win at a high level at both college and the NFL. Is he interested in coming back to college? I've not heard anything to indicate that. There's also not really jobs open right now that I would think would interest him. We're going to see probably next year, a bunch of SEC jobs open, possibly Big Ten. It's amazing to me that Belichick's going to, of all places, North Carolina. You would think it would have had to be one of the blue bloods that would get him. And that's really what's, I think, intrigues everybody so much about this, that of all places, UNC football.
Good to talk to you again. Thank you, Stewart.
Thanks, Dan.
Stewart Mandel, senior college football writer for The Athletic, co-host of Audible podcast.